Hey everybody, Jeff here with a new episode of the My Impossible podcast. Today, I am excited to welcome Joey McGlamory. Joey is the race director at More Heart Than Scars. He is the director of para-athletic services for the USOCR and on the board of directors of Dealers of Hope, an organization, an NGO based out of Tanzania, Africa. And Joey is the guy who's going to be leading me and my team up Kilimanjaro in September of 2025. Joey goes deep in this conversation to read something to us that he has never shared publicly before. What truly was his impossible in the most early days of his life after he was born. It's a vulnerable, honest, hard-nosed conversation. I think you're really going to enjoy this one with Joey. Joey McGlamory, welcome to the show. I am, beyond thrilled to have you as a guest.
Well, Jeff, I am beyond thrilled to be a part of your impossible and to be on the show with you. So awesome. It's going to be an amazing journey, and I'm very happy to be with you on this.
Awesome. So, what's your impossible?
Well, yeah, as I've discussed, my impossible started even at birth. And as I would mention, I would like to read something and just bear with me, because sometimes it gets hard to read other people's words about yourself, and I every time I pull this out, sometimes I get a little choked up, because it's maybe years between. But it's almost like I could just see my dad sitting down.
Well,
like
give us a little context. What is that you're reading? And
it is it was a write-up in a local paper that my father did. My sister actually penned it for him. It was his words. She penned it just based on my mom and dad's experience when they brought me home from the hospital after birth, and then just even a few years after that, until, as they said, I was well enough not to have to go back to the doctor. So that's kind of just a very broad context about what it is.
Yeah.
But I say it's a short read. It's about a page and a half. So
all right,
that's rip. Okay.
Yeah. Let her rip.
So the name of the article is just called Miracle. My father starts out by saying people have tried to explain miracles as being purely incidental or only a coincidence. We read of the great miracles that Christ performed during his brief life on earth. For example, the turning water into wine, making the blind to see, the lame to walk, and raising the dead. These are just a few examples, but all indicates God's greatness and his power. And then he goes on to say, no magician or professional healer on this earth can do these wondrous tasks. He says, I believe in miracles because I truly have seen one. My baby boy, Joey, is considered by me, my family, and those who were around at the time a living miracle. As a matter of fact, I find myself calling him the little miracle sometimes. And you have to understand too, he's writing this as I'm still an infant in his arms, so to speak, or in mom's arms, and he's just observing from a distance. He says, I watched him struggle for breath after birth due to birth complications and meningitis. We feared brain damage due to the lack of oxygen and also had very little blood flow. Here it says, he remained in an incubator for many hours and days in hopes of building up his lungs so that he could breathe on his own. We took him home, but we're still worried and they had to take him back to the hospital to see what else they could do. So it's my wife, Myrtle, had taken him to the doctor one afternoon on her way home, and he began the first of many struggles again to breathe for life itself. We rushed him back to the OR, and they gave him his first blood transfusion. It seemed to be making very little progress, and our local doctor turned the case over to a specialist in a much larger city, Macon, Georgia. The first transfusion didn't have the effects that they had hoped for, nor did it give any indication that Joey's blood was any better. His little body just fought it, and it seemed that his coloring wasn't right. It wasn't glowing pink as a little baby should. It was yellow and dulled in appearance. He was lifeless, and he cried most of the time. We went up to Dr. Spivey's office, which was the specialist in the bigger city, and just said, "What can we do?" And Dr. Spivey said, "Well, we've learned that he is anemic. He has an enlarged liver, and we just got to try another infusion." His blood count was extremely low. So after another transfusion, all we could do was hope. There's that word. He was placed in an oxidation chamber. He said, "My wife and I can only watch for days and weeks through the glass of this sliding isolate as our baby boy squirmed and screamed in pain, so much so that his spine looked like it was twisted. He wore the most wretched look on his face. He appeared to plead with us for help, yet we could do nothing to take him out of that oxidation tent. At one point, my wife, who is a nurse, said, "Screw this." He used a different word. Went inside and put her hand through one of the holes. Of course, she had a glove on her hand, but she stuck her hand through the hole. And as soon as she did, my baby boy grabbed her hand. And so I lost my place. Sorry, my wife, she grabbed his hand to comfort him. She can still recall the faint yet firm touch that our boy placed on her finger. She then knew that somehow it was all going to be okay because we have faith. He had been just basically given up on by all the doctors, because at one point he said, Mr. and Mrs. McGlamory, there's nothing else we can do for Joey. So if you are praying family, you might want to pray. He said, I looked into his eyes, and they were just like they were pleading with us to just not to lose faith. Most of the time, he was squirming and crying and didn't look like he was ever focusing on one particular thing at all. So much so that for the first several months of his life, we couldn't even tell what color his eyes were. We might have been hopeless, but we were certainly not hopeless. For I feel assured that our prayers were answered and the lives were going to change for our baby boy. We prayed that God would spare us this little angel that he had given us and whom we had grown to love in such a short amount of time. We prayed to God that he would spare him, let him live with us in this old world, and promise that we would do our best to provide for him and see that he got the best attention and the best love. We felt perhaps that it was a warning in our lives. We must have realized what God's intentions were, for he surely did spare our baby. He restored our baby's health. His life was definitely left in God's hands. We had a wonderful doctor who had been inspired by God, because once again, he told us it seemed all hope was lost. Had God not known the seriousness of our prayers, and he had not listened, we know that Joey would have not been with us. God is a wonderful God who answers prayers. He is a God of might and miracles. For as the song goes, it is written in the sky. The world itself is an example of one of God's miracles. At one time, death was written all over Joey's face. He looked as if he had struggled until there was no struggle left in him, and that his meningitis was going to take him from us. However, his pink color came back. His eyes, for the first time, had a sparkle, and we could see that they were brown. Up until this point, we just really didn't know. His enlarged liver soon was not a problem any longer, and we could touch him without wearing gloves or wearing masks, and most importantly, without him screaming in pain. His hemoglobin count went up, and finally our baby boy showed every indication of being a natural, healthy baby boy. We don't just have to take him back to the doctor, but now for every 6 months or so, we just give him the medicine like all other little growing babies usually have to take. We saw a miracle that day, and no words can ever express our testimony as it really was. No words can describe the condition that he was in. After all, who can explain a miracle but the miracle itself? All we know is that God answers prayers, and he does perform miracles. And we hope that our baby boy lives a long, healthy life, and in turn will have a mighty calling in his life. Sure. Written by Joey McGlamory, 1968. Whew, that's powerful. Sorry.
No.
Told you. Just vulnerable me. Wow. Sorry.
That's all good, man.
Whew. Okay.
So as you read that,
Whew.
it's,
Up to read, but
1969? It was written?
1968 was when he wrote that. That was about a year and a half. From what they all told me. That was about a year and a half after I came home.
Yeah.
And he was recounting the times just in the hospital, in the OR. And then when they thought they could bring me home, then he had to take me back. And then they had to,
Right.
and then finally being able to bring me home. And I'm telling you, years ago when I read that last line, I just felt like, I know that I was placed here on this earth for a reason. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I joke around about is my mom. My mom always thought that I was going to be a preacher or do something in the ministry in the way of standing behind a pulpit or just going out and spreading God's love and his word. But I remember a few years before she passed away, when I had really gotten involved, first with the Paralympics in 1996 here in Atlanta. I told her, I said, Mom, I don't think that's the direction that God has in store for me. But I promise you, I will make a difference in people's lives going forward. So that's, so I mean, I like to think that it's coming true with the work that I did, even in the Paralympics in 1996, and then work that I've done since then.
This was when you were an infant.
Yes.
Clearly,
Yeah.
It's had a mark on your life. I'm wondering what was from that experience where you weren't aware, you were conscious of that,
right?
At the time, probably have no memory at all of the actual events. What has the impact of that impossible being made possible? What has it had? What did it have as you were growing up?
Well, Jeff, it taught me that, well, first of all, I can do anything I want to if I put my mind to it, as me as an individual. And that through the years, um, because I was somewhat pampered for fear of relapsing or just something else happening, I pretty much was just given everything I wanted on a silver spoon. I never was really spanked as a child, and I just learned that I I can do all things if I just make up my mind. And as I got even older, I realized that I was watching other kids my age with their parents, and when their parents or their peers in our school systems would say, "Hey, you can't do this, you can't do this, you shouldn't do that." It's like, no, you can do anything you want if you want to. You just got to have that willingness to see it through. And I believe for me that it's just part of my DNA to never give up and to never quit. And like even to this day, when someone tells me that a doctor or a family member say, "Well, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that," or "I don't think you will ever be able to do something," it just really makes my blood boil, because you know what? That's just telling someone you might as well just roll over and give up. And I'm like, no, let me help you, because we'll make it happen. Whatever it is, we'll make it happen.
Do you have like the earliest conscious memory as a kid where that was your thought? Like, do you have a story of being told you can't do that, you shouldn't do that, maybe even by your parents? But what's your an early memory of you consciously saying, "No, anything is possible"?
Well, I guess it was my going from eighth grade into my freshman year in high school. I wanted to play football so bad because I was always a huge Dallas Cowboys football fan growing up. And of course, University of Georgia. I just knew that was going to be my future. And I wanted to play football. But I had so many people telling me, because I was an overweight kid, "You're never going to be good enough to play football." But I made up my mind my freshman year of high school that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make the team. And so I made my impossible possible by showing everybody that, you know what? I can do it. And I did do it.
Mm.
And that was
what did it take for that to happen?
It took me realizing that I needed to focus my mind on the task at hand. I needed to, well, exercise. I needed to get stronger. I needed to be disciplined in my eating, because all these things was what it was going to take. I needed to be faster. I needed to be stronger. And I needed to make it happen. So I did. I remember coming home from football tryouts and just being so happy that the coaches could see that I really had a passion. And they told me, they pulled me aside and said, "Hey, if you really want this, you may have to work harder than all the other boys, because right now you're a little slower." And they were very honest. They said, "You're a little bigger, so we need you to do this, this, and this. We need you to lose the weight. We need you to just on your own, away from football practice. We need you to run your sprints. We need you to just get out there and make it and do what it takes to become a football player on this team." And I did. And that's again, it was just one of those moments that I was like, all right, I can do this. And I did it.
Yeah. You know, our tag phrase, our phrase for my impossible is our possible, with
Right.
the hour pointing to community.
Right.
That this idea of being self-made is really kind of a myth. There really
Right.
is no such thing. Whether it be all the way back then or what you've learned along the way, what's true about that phrase for you? My impossible is our possible.
Mm. Mm. Well, it does take a community, and it takes a tribe. It did back then. Like I mentioned, I had some amazing football coaches who became like family to me and said, "We're going to help you do this," because you need someone that you can lean into, lean on. I mean, if it takes the shoulder to cry on, or if you need someone that you can just have a temper tantrum around and they're okay with it. They're like, you need to work it out. And even, I'm not trying to skip too far ahead, but just going forward with what I do now. We help. We're as a community of like-minded people, we will help anyone's impossible become their possible. And that's kind of where, I know there's a huge gap, but as far as I've every task that I've taken on since I can remember, I've always accomplished the mission. And I've always tried to instill that in others. It's like, as you can accomplish the mission, and let's put a team together that can help you do this. And even so now with what I'm doing with More Heart Than Scars and with Dealers of Hope, it's all about the community and surrounding an individual or a group of people with those people who will make that impossible our possible, or their possible.
What do you observe is required of the person in this type of setting? And I'll just share my story. I as you know, I was in a wheelchair as an adult, as a 34-year-old adult. And it's been a learning process to be able to say yes to that community and to that support. So I'm wondering for you, Joey, again, out of your own story or as you are in the lives of many, what have you learned is necessary for that person who's taking on that challenge, that impossible?
One word comes to mind: humility. You got to humble yourself and realize that no matter what you are faced with, you're not alone. There are others who may not be your exact situation, but are definitely in a very similar situation. Because Jeff, even now, as a matter of fact, I think it was a couple of days ago, I had a conversation with someone about their current situation. And she's not there yet to, it's not just humility. It's also acceptance. Acceptance of the situation, acceptance of your ability levels, whether it was something that you've had since childhood or something that's happened to you, like as you later on in your adult life. Humility, acceptance. Those have to be rooted and grounded to start with. But then you got to have a tenacity, a burning fire and desire from within to not only prove to others, but you got to prove to yourself that you can do what it takes to overcome, to adapt, and move past what you're going through, what you're dealing with, and to say, and not as a boastful or look at me now, but just to regain confidence or self-confidence in yourself. I've got so many people's success stories just going through my mind right now. And just one young lady in particular right now that is fresh. Her name is Rebecca. I've just written a book called Limitless. Rebecca came to us I guess it would have been 2 years ago, December, about doing a Spartan race with us in February of last year. She's like, I just became a below the knee amputee. I don't know what my life is going to look like. I'm really depressed, but I heard about More Heart Than Scars and what you guys do for people. I believe and hope that if I come out with you guys, it might give me some perspective. And I'm really hoping that it can show me what my life might be like. Well, as I said, just not even a year later, just over a year later, she's written a book about the possibilities now that she sees in her life. And I think she mentions me by name as giving her the chance to come out with a team, but certainly the team helped her and showed her that even with a prosthetic limb, she can conquer whatever obstacle is in front of her. Mm. And now she just has this joy and this sweet spirit about her and this confidence that is like she's like night and day, man. She was this person when I met her, and now she's this person. And I just love seeing that in people. I tell able-bodied people all the time, you'll never know what it's like to help someone overcome something and to see them come from the pits of depression and anxiety, PTSD, and watch them come to a race or whatever it may be. It may be just going for a hike in the woods, but just giving them a task and them accomplishing it. I just use something like a Spartan race or a Tough Mudder, because to see the smile and the happiness on the person's face when they cross the finish line, you just can't put that into words. All you can just do is like, this is my why. This is why I do what I do right here, because this is what it's all about. If you can see someone's life turn around like that, you've basically saved someone's life, because there have been others in the past who've just flat out told me, hey, if I didn't have this happen in my life, I might not be here, because I had been contemplating suicide. I had been planning out my own suicide. But because you and your team, More Heart Than Scars, have shown me that I can complete a task, I can conquer my obstacle, has given me my why, has turned my impossible to my possible now.
Yeah.
And given me a new lease on life. So there's just so many, and we certainly don't have time for me just to keep telling you story after story after story. What I know you already are seeing some of this in your own life, but I can't wait until you hit that summit of Mount Kilimanjaro next year. It is just going to be such an amazing experience for you.
Can't wait. Joey, some people, it's all about the one who's in front of them and helping them. For others, there's a bigger vision around their why. For you, maybe it's both. Maybe it's both. What do you hope for from this work?
I guess the cliche was to leave the world a better place. But you know what, Jeff? It's just how can I simplify it? If I can just say, if but one person's life is changed, everything that I do, the sacrifices that I make, it's all worth it. If I know that someone decided to stay with us a little while longer and not take their life, then it's worth it. I have never wanted to be in the spotlight. I have been so happy to stay behind the scenes. I don't need the accolades. It's funny because the irony, I should say here is right now, as I mentioned off camera to you, that I've been in these meetings with the para committees for upcoming championship games and the rules and regulations surrounding that. And the one thing that I have been emphatically stating to these people is, me and my team, we don't care about a podium. We don't care about a medal. We care about that person in the wheelchair, or that person who's an amputee, or that person who has just gotten out of rehab for drugs and alcohol. That is our focus, is to put that person in the spotlight, because they need it. They need hope. They need to have their confidence restored in their abilities, and that their life is worth living. So again, to try to sum it up, if someone can say to me, my life is now worth living because of not me, the work we do, then it's worth it all. That's it. I guess you could say in a nutshell. There's just so much to it. I mean, there's just.
Could you talk, and you just pointed to being on this committee that is going to be an influencer in adaptive OCRs, obstacle course races, potentially even getting that into the Paralympics in the future. What's your hope with that work in particular?
Well, Jeff, that goes back to even, again, to the 1996 Paralympic Games when I was a volunteer with the company that I was working for. I thought to myself, wow, just sitting there watching these athletes during time trials and warm-ups, I was like, this is truly amazing. Watching these people with these disabilities perform at this level, it's amazing to see them on the world stage like this. So going forward, now that I've been involved with obstacle course racing since 2009, from that point, as I was starting out, as we all, try to, we want to make the podiums, we want to get up there. But I thought to myself then, wow, wouldn't it be great to have this sport in the Olympics? So, and then that has just evolved into my work with More Heart Than Scars and the para athletes that are in obstacle course racing. So now my motivation since 2013, which is when I stepped out of the limelight and said, you know what? My focus is going to be with the adaptive para community, as is called at the Olympic level. I want to give them a voice on the world stage because they deserve it. They need it. And it's all about inclusivity at every level. Just recently, I was reading an article about, and I think I even posted it somewhere, about the para athletes right now. They were talking about their experience in Paris with the Olympics that are going on right now and the Paralympics. Just some of the inaccessibility that they're experiencing, like on the subway train, some of the buildings. And then it switched to some of the para athletes who live and train in and around some of the larger cities here in the U.S. I won't name any because I don't want to get in trouble. But it's sad how, because of the inaccessibility there is for people in wheelchairs or people with amputations, the links that they have to go through to get in certain public establishments is unreal. So I believe the more we can put the spotlight on para athletes, whether it's just regular para sports or OCR, the more the committees at B are going to have to take a look at people with different abilities, as we call them. And they're going to have to take a look and like, okay, what can we do to be more inclusive for everyone? So I guess I'm one of the biggest advocates of the ADA, American Disabilities Act, and making sure that, you know what, they stick to their guns and make even federal buildings. I will say that because that was one of the ones that was even being shown in a video clip that I saw. A federal building in a large city had no, and I do not like this word, but they were not handicap accessible, which is infuriating, honestly. But as we're trying to change the language there too, it's not ADA compliant. Yeah. So again, to answer your question more specifically, I believe the more we put the spotlight on the para OCR community, it'll just add another level of, hey, you know what? These people who are different ability, they need accessibility just like us able-bodied humans. So that's one of my main focuses.
I love it. Well, as a wheelchair user, I live it. I live it every day. So I love what your vision is there. Joey, as we come to the end of this conversation, there's going to be somebody listening to watching this that they need it in that moment. Yeah. And I just want to give you a moment to say, you don't know their circumstance or the details of their life, but they're facing their impossible. Life feels impossible for one reason or the other. What do you want to say to them?
Wow. Well, first of all, to whoever is listening, and whatever you're going through, whether it's you're contemplating your suicide, whether you're just in such a pit of depression or anxiety or whatever it is, the first thing I want to say is you are truly not alone. There are people here who are willing to help. With the new 988 hotline that is out there, finally we have people who are trained in mental health counseling, not just a 911 operator. Please, 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 please reach out to either them or someone that you trust and you know, but you've got to talk to someone. Don't just internalize this, because I can tell you from experience that whatever you think your impossible is, it can be very possible and will be very possible if you surround yourself with the right people. But you've got to be willing to reach out. And I'll flip the script there. For those of you who are listening and you're able-bodied and you have family members, you have close friends who you know are struggling, please reach out to them often, every day, if necessary, because you truly don't know what someone is going through internally. And the only way to know is just to say, hey, man, are you okay? And if they say, I'm fine, which we kind of know that's become I'm not okay, but I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Just simply respond back with, you know what? When you're ready to talk, or if you need a shoulder, I'm always here for you. That is the best thing we can do for anyone. It's all about communication.
Awesome. And if people want to learn more about the work you're doing, where can we send them?
Well, you can certainly, for me personally, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all the medias. Joey McGlamory, Facebook, Joey McGlamory at Instagram. I think it's Joey McGlamory at Snapchat, I believe is how I'm just getting used to the whole Snapchat thing, but from what people are telling me with all these algorithms, I need to be on all of them. Please reach out to me personally, or if you want to see what my work or our work looks like with More Heart Than Scars, we're also all over the social medias. Facebook, More Heart Than Scars. Instagram is More Heart Than Scars Foundation. Snapchat, I believe, is also More Heart Than Scars. I mean, we're out there. Or you can simply come to moreheartthanscars.com or moreheartthanscars.org. We are on both websites. We have easy access for anyone to reach out to us. Awesome. And usually I am the one who sees the brunt of every email that comes in, and I will do my best to personally respond to each and every email that comes through.
Awesome. Well, we'll put all that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Boy, this has been, words are escaping me. I don't want to say amazing, just really, really meaningful for me. Thank you for who you are in the world, and your heart. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.